Uh-huh. 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 Okay. Hey everybody, Teching 101 here. Class is now officially in session, okay? So I'm going to need you to take out a writing utensil and a notepad. Today's topic is Fisher Tiger and the One Piece timeline. We're diving straight into this. Chapter 1167 just came out. It's a very dense chapter that included a lot of things, and this isn't even really the most notable thing. I think a lot more people would want me to talk about Shanks and Shamrock right now. There's a lot of other YouTubers that are doing that. You know what? We'll get to that in a moment. There's a lot of theories about that, whether or not Shanks and Shamrock pulled like a thing from that Lindsay Lohan movie back in the 90s. What was it called? The Parent Trap? Did they switch places? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but there's enough time to talk about that later. Today, we're talking about Fisher Tiger because I'm laser focusing on that because it involves the timeline, the sacred One Piece timeline. So seriously, school is in session. Take out a pen, take out a notepad. If you have the One Piece volumes, if you have the required reading for this course, it is volume 53 and volume 63, and we'll also be referencing volume 1167 as well. That's right, you will do the required reading in my course, damn it. I never did the required reading whenever I was in college. I can't remember a single time whenever a professor told me to read like chapters 3 to 5. I never did it. Always skimmed it barely, and I ended up passing, so that was good. Anyway, all right. Today we are going to be referencing 5 major chapters of One Piece. Chapter 521 from the Amazon Lily arc. Chapters 621, 622, and 623. Those are all from the Fishman Island arc. And then finally, chapter 1167, which is the newest chapter in the Elbaf arc. Okay, we all good there? You take your notes? Alrighty. So, we will begin with the first time that Fisher Tiger is ever referenced in the One Piece story. This is chapter 521, Hoof of the Celestial Dragons, and he is mentioned by Boa Hancock. Boa is telling the story to Luffy. Sandersonia and Marigold, as well as Granny Neon, Gloriosa, are all there kind of listening to this story. Boa shows Luffy the mark of the Celestial Dragon on her back and begins to explain the story of how her and her sisters were kidnapped and sold into slavery at Marie Geoise by the Celestial Dragons. She mentions that she was captured when she was 12 and she was freed 4 years later when she was 16. Her sisters were, okay? So that was 15 years ago from the present. That lines up with the last chapter. No issues there. No problems so far. Boa goes on to explain the person that freed her and a lot of other slaves was a fishman by the name of Fisher Tiger. And we didn't really get to see him clearly in this chapter. It was just kind of silhouetted. Boa tells the story that he climbed the Red Line itself. That's where that comes from. Boa is telling that version to Luffy. Now, Boa was there. She was freed, but she would not have been there to, like, witness him climbing the Red Line, but that's the story she tells Luffy. However, she was there to witness, of course, her freedom as Fisher Tiger is going through the whole city and burning it down and blasting all the buildings and the Celestial Dragons and all that kind of shit, right? So her and her sisters get the hell out of there along with a lot of other slaves in the process, all right? And so that's where we first hear about Fisher Tiger. She also concludes that story by saying that he takes a lot of the slaves and rebrands them, you know, over the symbol of the hoof of the Celestial Dragons to the symbol of the sun and forms the Sun Pirates, okay? So that's our first experience learning about Fisher Tiger. Okay, so that's the story Boa Hancock tells Luffy. Now, cutting exactly 100 chapters later, which is crazy, 521 right up to 621. We are now in the Fishman Island arc, okay? We get a flashback. Chapter 621, Otohime and Tiger, starts off with a flashback to 16 years prior to the present. So this is 1 year before Boa and her sisters and Koala and all of the slaves are freed at Marie Geoise. Fisher Tiger arrives back at Fishman Island after being gone for some number of years. He meets Jinbei and Arlong, and they even mention, hey, Brother Tai, it's been a long time. You've been gone so long in this last adventure you've been going on, right? Fisher Tiger was known as an adventurer. He was not a pirate. He would just go out to sea looking for adventure. That was what he did. This one particular journey, though, apparently lasted a really long time. Put a pin in that. We're going to get back to that in a moment, all right? So he goes to Ryugu Palace, and he has an audience with Neptune and Otohime. This occurs in the following chapter, chapter 622, the Sun Pirates, okay? Now, in this chapter, he tells Otohime and Neptune something. Otohime results in tears after hearing this. We as the audience do not read this. Oda skips over that in this chapter. We learn about what he said later, okay? But he goes to have an audience with the king and queen and mentions that what he experienced in the many years that he had been gone was humans. That's what he says. He's like, I experienced humanity. And he also says that he plans on freeing the slaves at Marie Geoise. He's kind of like, I know what I must do kind of situation, right? Then the narrator comes on and says, Fisher Tiger had made a huge, big news in the world by assaulting Marie Geoise, the Holy Land, and devastating that city and freeing a bunch of the slaves in the process. At this point, Jinbei resigns from the royal army, and a bunch of other fishermen that used to be friends growing up decide to ally together. Arlong was there, Karubi was there, Macro was there, Hachan was there. They all got together, along with some former slaves that Fisher Tiger freed from Marie Geoise. They are all branded with the symbol of the sun, and they form the Sun Pirates. Okay? Okay. Now, chapter 623. Fisher Tiger the Pirate. This is a few years later. They run across Koala. They bring Koala back to her homeland, Fool Shout Island. It is an ambush. Tiger is shot multiple times by the Marines. He's on the captured Marine ship. He's losing blood. The Sun Pirates want to give him blood that's on the ship. It would be human blood, though. Fisher Tiger refuses, and this is where he comes clean, because the Sun Pirates, up until now, did not know the truth. He tells them, I was a slave. He tells them, all of those years I was gone on my last adventure, I was captured and I was a slave, and they kept me at Marie Geoise for several years. Okay? Now, go back to that scene I told you to remember, chapter 621. He arrives back at Fishman Island after many years. Jinbei even says as much, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. This is where all of that comes to light, where he says, yeah, I was actually a slave for those last few years. I escaped, but I couldn't leave the other slaves behind, so I freed them. Okay. Now, where does the inconsistency come in? Well, in the most recent chapter, chapter 1167, Ida's son, we see the flashback 15 years ago. In this version, Fisher Tiger is at Marie Geoise 15 years ago. He is wearing slave attire. His clothing is all, torn up and ragged. It looks like he had been a slave for many years at this point. He's wearing handcuffs. He has a collar around his neck. Not sure if it's the bomb collar, but considering how the celestial dragons are, I'd assume it would be. And he has broken free, and he is running through the streets of Marie Geoise. He runs across a shadowy figure in the night, and he sees them, and he thinks, oh, shit, it's a god's night. Okay, he's getting ready for a fight. There's a clash between Fisher Tiger and this man. We assume it's Shanks. Maybe it's Shamrock. I don't know. Not really important for right now. This individual slashes and destroys Fisher Tiger's restraints, destroys his handcuffs and the collar as well. It crumbles apart. And this person, Shanks, tells him, hey, I've left the armory unlocked for you, and I'll tell you how to get there. And then in the next scene, we see all the buildings getting blown up. Fisher Tiger's raid on the Holy Land. We see Boa, we see Sanderzonia, we see Koala. They're all getting the hell out of Dodge. They're all fleeing the Holy Land. And the narrator comes on and says this was caused by the future captain of the Sun Pirates, Fisher Tiger. This was the ransacking of sacred Marie Geoise by Fisher Tiger. And he becomes a criminal after this and gets a bounty and all that stuff. Okay, so how many times did Fisher Tiger go to Marie Geoise? Was it once or twice? Did he climb the red line or did he not? So, here is the inconsistency as I see it. All right. Now there are ways around this, but this is the inconsistency as I see it. He went out on a journey. He got captured for several years at Marie Geoise. He breaks free and leaves by himself. He is at Fishman Island 16 years ago. Okay? 16 years ago, he goes back to Fishman Island. He was already a slave at this point. All right? Then, a year later, these slaves are all freed. That's the scene right here. The inconsistency I see is it really seems this is the first time Tiger is fleeing. He looks like he's been a slave for many years at this point. He's all chained up. And he really doesn't seem like he has much of a plan outside of just, I'm freed, I'm getting out of here. And then that's when Shanks shows up and, destroys his restraints and tells him, hey, man, there's the armory. It's over there. I'll tell you how to get there. Do what you got to do, right? And then that's when Tiger decides, oh, I'm going to go and raise hell up here and then free as many slaves as possible. Okay, so the only way that this makes sense is if Tiger was a slave, then goes back to Fishman Island, then decides, tells Neptune and Otohime 16 years ago, I'm going to go free the slaves. I'm going to go back to Marie Geoise. He would have climbed the red line at this point and then get himself captured as a slave again? That's the part that doesn't make much sense to me. Because it could work if he's like, I'm going to climb the red line or get myself captured and get taken back to Marie Geoise, and then I'm going to free myself. But, at that point, you're already restrained, so the plan might not work too well. And it really does seem right here like he doesn't have much of a plan. He's just running free. And then Shanks is the one that frees him and then gives him the plan with the armory. Okay? So it really seems like Oda is folding these events into one event. Like, Tiger was captured, is a slave, breaks free, Shanks helps him, then he does the raid all in one night. Okay? And that's the thing, because he was at Fishman Island a year prior to this. So he would have had to have gotten captured as a slave again, but that just doesn't make sense to me. Like, he's like, oh, it made more sense that, like, all right, I'm freed, I'm gonna go back, this time I'm gonna be heavily armed, climb the red line, and then boom, boom, destroy as many structures and free as many slaves as possible, and then get the hell out of Dodge a second time, right? It doesn't seem like Shanks and Fisher Tiger have ever met before this, like they weren't in collusion with one another. Fisher Tiger seemed honestly a little bit surprised over what happened. He thought Shanks was a God's Knight that was gonna, like, kill him, and so he was getting ready for a fight. Right? So it didn't seem like Shanks and Fisher Tiger were working together before this. This was just something that Shanks came up with all of a sudden at the last minute, right? So the way that I'm looking at this, the way that I'm seeing this from reading the chapters, going back and reading everything from the moment on Amazon Lily when Boa tells the story to Luffy to rereading the flashback at Fishman Island, yes, Fisher Tiger, I think people point to the moment where he comes clean to his crew and he says, I was actually a slave the whole time. Like, oh, I never climbed the red line. I never did any of that crazy stuff. I was just a slave the whole time. He's talking about the moment before he first returned to Fishman Island. He's talking about the moment when he was addressing Jinbei and Arlong. Like, hey, it's been a while. Yeah, crazy stuff happened. It was really tough. He doesn't actually plan on telling them. He only tells them on his deathbed, right? But that does not rescind anything about the climbing the red line or anything like that, right? So, yeah, it can work. Fisher Tiger would have had to have the plan of, I'm going to get recaptured, get restraints and collars put back on me, thrown in a cell, and then I hope I can escape, and then I hope I could figure out some way to save the other slaves, and it just ends up working out because Shanks was there, but he didn't plan on Shanks being there. Either that, or Fisher Tiger went back the second time, armed to the teeth. Like, I'm going to bring a bazooka and all these guns and everything like that, climbed the red line, got to the top, but then, oops, got captured again, got all of his weapons taken off of him, got thrown into raggedy slave attire, chained up, thrown in a cell, then escaped a second time, then ran through the streets, then met Shanks, and that just seems like I guess. Now, there is a scene really quickly, and it's not in the manga, because I went through all the chapters in the manga. I did not see it, where you see him very clearly during the raid on Marie Geoise wearing his clothing, not the slaves, like, all ragged clothing and everything he was given, the way we see him in the last chapter. He's, like, not beat up and anything, and he has, like, a Hawaiian shirt, and he's, like, blasting the houses and everything at Marie Geoise, and he has the big bazooka and everything like that. That was, I believe, something only in the anime, so I'm not going to use that for this. But yeah, he was clearly at Marie Geoise twice in the manga. From everything that I have read, it seems very clear he left. He was there at Fishman Island 16 years ago. This Boa is still captured at this point. Koala is still captured at this point, and he's all the way down back at Fishman Island, so he has to go all the way back up to save them. He had to be there twice. It's, I guess, the second time he got captured somehow, or maybe he thought it was part of the plan, but it really didn't seem like it was part of the plan. That's the part here that's giving me a little bit of a head-scratcher moment. So if anybody has any better ideas, let me know, because it really seems like it's just folded into one event. Also, something as a little bit of an aside, the scene when Fisher Tiger and Shanks, or possibly Shamrock, I don't know, are clashing, right? And Shanks frees him, cuts his handcuffs off and his collar off and everything. We also have a scene where Fisher Tiger grabs a bandage off of Shanks, and then there's a splat of blood coming off of Shanks's eye. And in the next scene, we see the two, and Shanks has the bandaged eye, right? So this is interesting. I'm assuming this is right after he gets the scar from Blackbeard. It was mentioned that he got that scar from Blackbeard. So I guess Fisher Tiger, thinking that he was a God's Knight, that he was an enemy, went to go attack him, ripped off the bandage, and at the same time, the wound opened up again, and then he started to bleed, right? I don't think Fisher Tiger gave him the scar there, because his face would have already have been bandaged. So he gets cut by Blackbeard, goes to Marie Geoise, the wound is still healing. Fisher Tiger snatches the Band-Aid off, or the bandage off. He begins to bleed again. The wound is reopened. And then he frees Fisher Tiger, and he's like, hey, wait. Armory's open. Here it is. Have fun. And then the next day, you see Shanks and Shamrock together, and Shanks has the bandage. He put new bandages around his eye, and Shamrock's telling him, hey, make sure to take it easy. You want the wound to heal. He already had the bandages when Fisher Tiger attacked him, so the wound was already there, right? So yeah, just interesting. I didn't see that the first time I read the chapter, that he has like the bandage and then he was bleeding in that scene. You could see a little bit of blood dripping off of Shanks's face. But yeah. We'll get into the theories about Shanks and Shamrock, because there's like a whole thing there of whether or not they switched places. I even brought this up when we were still at God Valley, like the two babies that got separated. It was like, wait a minute, are we gonna do a thing where maybe we always assumed Shanks was the one that got taken onto Roger's ship? Maybe it was Shamrock the whole time, or maybe later they started working together. Maybe they're both evil. Maybe they're both good. Maybe they really are neither, and it's just as it is presented. Shanks is the good guy, Shamrock is the bad guy. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just presented that way, and we're just thinking too much about this. I don't know, but yeah. I guess I will leave you to just kind of summarize the points of this video involving Fisher Tiger in the timeline. How many times did Fisher Tiger go to Marie Geoise? Was he a slave both times? Did he climb the red line? Those are the questions, I suppose. All right. We're going to do a test next Friday, so make sure to study chapters 621 to 623, read the necessary tankobons, and we're going to do a review session, and, just it's all in the syllabus. Okay, just read the syllabus, and you'll be fine. Class participation, of course, all that stuff, right? Okay. So anyway, yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching 101, signing out. I hope this made sense. Probably not. Later.